Hey, kid family, what's going on, guys? Today's video is going to be very interesting, very informative, so stay tuned. We're going to be talking about wheel spacers, the two different kinds of wheel spacers, pros of a bolt-on kit versus an adapter or a spacer. And I'm going to do a mock-up of both of these on my vehicle. I'm going to talk about the pros, the cons, the pros, the cons, and hopefully at the end of this video you guys can decide what is a better spacer for your application and you guys can make an educated decision on your purchase. So stay tuned and let's get it. Alright guys, the first type of wheel spacer is pretty much a bolt-on kit, and what I mean by this is you pretty much put it on your hub, your factory studs stick out from here. You have these provided nuts which you would put back on the factory studs, and then once those are all tight, you install the wheel on these new studs that are built into the wheel spacer. The pro of such a device is it's a very easy installation. Literally takes about 5 minutes to install. Very easy, very convenient. If you ever want to remove these, it's very simple. So these are very popular in the automotive industry because they are simple, they are affordable, and anybody can do it. However, they do have some negatives, and I will get into those shortly. So here we have an HNR wheel spacer, made in Germany, very high quality part. Now, what's the difference between this one and the previous spacer? Well, there are no studs built into this one. As you can see, this one has studs built into it. This one has no studs built into it. And the reason for this one is because on this set, the manufacturer provides you with studs. And no, these studs are not bolted on into the spacer or adapter here. They're actually replacing your factory studs. Now the difference between these studs and your factory studs is if your spacer is 10 millimeters long, the stud is 10 millimeters longer than your factory one in order to compensate for this distance, because you don't want to lose thread when you're bolting up your lug nuts. You want to have enough thread for safety purposes. That is the basic construction of this wheel spacer. And now I'm going to talk about the negatives. It's going to take a lot more time to install, especially if there's problems pulling out the old studs. Sometimes you need to press these studs out, especially if it's in the front and the hub assembly needs to come off. So it's not as easy as the bolt-on spacer I previously showed. But the benefit of this is if you have your studs here going from your hub, you just put this wheel spacer on and your wheel goes on here. In theory, the wheel is still holding on through the hub. Alright, it is secure and the spacer is just spacing, but you're still getting a grip from the hub, which is very secure, all the way to the wheel, which would go on, and then lug nut would be here. So it is very secure, and I'll show you this during the mock-up procedure. As far as the bolt-on spacer, your hub is here. You put this on your factory studs, and then the wheel goes on here, and then your lug nuts tie in. The problem with this design is that in theory, if these bolts that are connected to your factory spacers go bad or this wheel spacer cracks, your wheels are only holding on to this. And if this spacer fails, you are losing your wheels, you are getting in an accident, quite possibly a very dangerous one, and you might die. So in order to summarize once again, both of these wheel spacers are very similarly priced. This one is very easy to install, anybody can do it. This one can be a little bit more challenging depending on the application. This one, in my opinion and in my experience, is a lot more dangerous because it is utilizing a second set of studs instead of a factory studs that come out from the hub. This one is a lot more safer because it is using just an extended stud, which is still bolted into your hub, and it is a lot safer and offers a lot more protection, especially if you're going to be driving it aggressively. So now let's go to the car, let's mock these up. I'm going to show you the mock-up procedure. Before we go mock up the car, I just wanted to talk about the materials used in the build quality of these wheel spacers, because the price differences if you go on eBay or if you go to a reputable wheel spacer manufacturer such as H&R or Toshiba is crazy. Here, for example, is an eBay wheel spacer. Now, when I bought this, I did my research. I looked at the material used. eBay most of the time offers a 6061 T6 billet aluminum quality material. Okay, so it is very comparable. It is definitely a stronger aluminum, and it should do the trick. However, when I do research Toshiba, I'm sorry if I might be saying it the wrong way, but Toshiba uses a aluminum magnesium combination. Now the reason Toshiba uses aluminum and magnesium combination is to make a stronger, more quality wheel spacer. Magnesium is 34% lighter by volume than aluminum, but magnesium is expensive and increases the cost production. Aluminum is non-corrosive and magnesium has a tendency to corrode, but with the combination of magnesium and aluminum, Toshiba makes a very good, lightweight, strong quality wheel spacer. As far as H&R is concerned, these things are very high quality, but H&R, according to their website, has a proprietary alloy specific to H&R. It is lightweight and it is stronger than the 606T. So there are a little bit of differences in the manufacturing process, in the materials used. Please don't buy the cheapest one you see. Make sure it is at least at a minimum the 6061 T6 billet aluminum material. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, now these spacers are for demonstrating purposes only, so these are not the correct ones for this vehicle. Okay guys, here is the spacer or the adapter from H&R. So what you would do in theory is replace these factory studs. You would press those out, and again, depending if they're easy or if they're challenging, you might need a shop to do it for you. And then you would install these longer extended studs. So these things would be sticking out a little bit more than the factory studs. So for example, I'm just going to show you why we need to change the studs, because if you're using your factory studs and you put the wheel spacer onto the hub assembly, you can clearly see there's barely enough room for the studs. So if you put your wheel on here, there's no room to put your lug nuts on and thread this back on. But with an extended stud, these things would be still sticking out another 10 to 15 centimeters or millimeters. And then you would put the wheel onto this and you would still have enough room to tighten the studs. And in theory, the wheel spacer is just an in-between object, but you still have security from the studs, which are still bolted onto the hub assembly in the back. So these things are rock solid. I definitely feel very safe installing these style of adapters or spacers in the vehicle, because in essence they are just here to space your wheel, but you still have amazing security from the studs. This is what I highly recommend. I highly recommend extended studs and these kind of adapters. They are safe, much safer, and there's much less risk involved Now, the second set of wheel spacers is the bolt-on kit. These pretty much bolt up directly into your car, so you have your factory hub, your factory studs. All you have to do is slip it on. The bolts that are provided, you are going to utilize to tighten down the wheel spacer. So once you have those installed, you run into another controversy here. As you guys can see, those studs are still sticking out past the wheel spacer. Now this can be a problem because when you install your wheel, you want your wheel to be flush against the wheel spacer itself. Now if these bolts are sticking out, you have two options. One option would be to grind the rest of that factory stud off, and then you could put your wheel onto the new studs flat against the adapter. That will work, but again, keep in mind you're grinding your factory studs off. So at a later date, when you want to install your factory wheels with no wheel spacer, you did just shorten your factory stud by probably 5-6 millimeters. Okay, so the other option you would have if you don't want to cut off the factory studs would be to make sure you guys are using a wheel where they have holes inside of them. So even though the factory studs are sticking out, those will be hid into these channels over here. There's no issue with them sticking out if you have wheels that accept that extra slack. Some wheels do not have such spacing like this, and in that instance, and you will have to grind off the excess stud. Now keep in mind, you always want to make sure you guys use and buy wheel adapters or spacers that are hub centric. This, for example, you can see the factory hub is right there, and this wheel spacer is all around it, but it is not touching the hub, so it is really not balanced properly, and it can lead to vibrations when you're driving on the highway. Always buy adapters that are hub centric. Now this has a little piece that you put in here, and it is hub centric. I just do not have it for the demonstrating purposes. But one thing I wanted to show you guys, and this is why I hate bolt-on wheel spacers, because I bought these wheel spacers, I put them on, I torqued them down appropriately with a torque wrench. After 500 miles per instructions, they told me to retighten the lug nuts, these factory lug nuts, or retighten these factory bolts, and that's what we were doing. And we came to an observation, as you guys can see here. One of them was cracked. You can see the crack alongside the wheel spacer here. Inside, let's see, inside you can see it here, and it could be due to over tightening, but again, I was tightening them properly. And this is why I hate wheel spacers that bolt onto your factory studs, because you run the risk of breaking or cracking the wheel spacer. And then if, let's say, one slot fails like this, and then another slot fails like this, this wheel spacer is pretty much not holding on to anything at that point, and will fail and will fall off. And your wheel is just directly connected to the wheel spacer. So if wheel spacer falls from the hub through these bolts, everything is falling off, and you're gonna see wheels flying. Alright guys, so in conclusion, in my opinion, my experience, I would not buy the bolt-on wheel spacer. I wouldn't buy these things unless they're for a specific purpose, such as a show car where I just bolt them up for an auto show, and it looks, and the fitment is nice. But with a daily driver, with the obstacles of the road, with the potholes, I would not trust these bolt-on wheel spacers. I would definitely go the extra route, put in the extra time, and properly get a wheel adapter with extended studs. That way your wheels are much more safer, less risk involved. And from watching all these videos on YouTube of these wheel spacers falling off, majority of those I noticed were bolt-on wheel spacers such as these. So in conclusion, I hope you guys can learn something from this video. I hope it shows you the pros and cons of each, and for your application you can choose which one would be better for you. So thank you guys for watching again. Bully Kid checking out. Stay tuned for more videos.